History of the
Well,
Channel
hear about
Tunnel.
you yourself.
Oh, me.
How old are you?
I'm 72.
72.
72. I finished up as a construction manager on the Channel Tunnel. I've been a project manager on the High Speed 1 from Folkestone to St Pancras. I did the recovery of the Heathrow Express after the collapse there. I've spent some time abroad in Hong Kong on the mass transit railways that they've got there as the chief engineer. So I've done quite a lot of significant sized projects.
You've done it all, really, haven't you? Let's face it. So you've done that little list.
And in senior roles, and also with a contractor, a project manager, and also latterly as a client as well. So I've seen it from all different sides.
All over the world, you've done every job, really. You've done the huge jobs, massive, multi-billion-pound jobs, I suppose.
£1 job, yeah, with a lot of help.
With a lot of help. Are you sort of in consultancy now, or are you?
No, I've retired now, except that sometimes I'm invited onto an expert panel for HS2.
Right. Okay, so you did a bit of work with HS2.
Yeah, but very, very little.
Now we're here for a specific reason.
Yeah.
Aren't we? Now tell me the role. I mean, it's a massive part in a huge episode in British history.
Yeah. Well, the project was classed as the most significant and impressive project of the century, because it was in the late 80s, 90s. The role that I had was I was managing the service tunnel and all of the work that was carried out from the service tunnel, because we had to build cross passages. We had the big crossover chamber and things like that, all done through whilst the tunnel boring machine, the first tunnel boring machine, was going towards France. And we had a team working with me of 1,800 people at the time. The total working on the project was near 5,000, but I was responsible for that first tunnel and associated works. On the day, or before the day, when we had the breakthrough, we'd arranged how we were going to do it with the French. We were going to turn our machine to the side and just bury it. They wanted to recover their machine because it was more expensive, different type of machine that they'd used. And our machine had done 22.5 kilometres. Theirs had only done 16.5, so they could reuse a lot of the parts and things. So we agreed that we would first of all drill a hole between the two when we were 50 feet away to make sure that they were going to align, and that was very successful. And then we drove a heading, which is by hand, which is a sort of square box, small tunnel that's supported just by timbers and things short term, so that we could get really close before the actual breakthrough on the day. And we all went down there with enthusiasm and excitement and things. We had a ritual where 15 people would go through to France and carry on through, and 15 Frenchmen would come through. Our opposite numbers would come through to England. And we all had our passport. The 15 of us had our passport stamped, and away we went. And I pre-selected Graham Fagg actually to be the first man, because I decided that we would put everyone who worked on the tunnel for the 3 years, we would put in a hat and draw one out, and so that's what I did. And Graham was the perfect person. He was born in Dover, just locally. He lived in Deal. He was quite articulate, and he was a great guy for the first one. And he was very honoured. He was told what to say when he went through, a bit like the Neil Armstrong sort of thing. And it really went well. It was exciting. And when he first broke through that last piece, there was a big cheer on both sides as we all waited. And at that point, everyone wanted to see. There was just over his size of a head. Everyone wanted to see Graham breaking through. And there was a photographer on our side realised he was on the wrong side for getting the news and the best pictures. So he wanted to go through first. He pushed his way through so that he could. I said, "Wait a minute, Graham is the one who's making history." So I had to pull him back physically once we, because first of all there was the two heads popped through, and then we had to make the hole bigger so that people could go through. And Graham went through, met his opposite number, and they had a chat through the newsreel immediately on because it was on ITN, I think. They interrupted a school program on the Saturday morning, and then I was the second person to go through. Malcolm Rifkind, as Minister of Transport, where I was the third, and I felt that I was representing the staff on the project, the British engineers, really. And yeah, it was a really proud moment. Excuse me.
Obviously, one that still beats
Yeah,
in
well,
the heart.
it does, and I think Graham would say the same if he was still here. Unfortunately, he died a few months ago, and because of that, it allowed me to fulfil a promise that I made to Margaret Thatcher. Because when she came to start the machine, first of all, she pressed a button to start the cutters on the machine, and she saw it, and she said, "Could I have a piece of that rock?" And so we stopped the machine and we got a piece of rock and we gave it to her. And I said to her, "It's not the most important piece. The most important piece is the very last piece." And I said, "If you come back in 3 years, I'll give you it." Now, unfortunately, she lost her prime ministership a month before, and so anyway, I took the very last piece, and I was carrying it, thinking to myself, "Well, that'd be nice to try and get it to her and whatever." And when we'd gone through, I and two of my bosses, one was an American, one was a Irish managing director, and we got in a helicopter straight away and flew back across so that we could be there when the 15 French came through. And I was still carrying this bit of rock, and somebody asked me from the press, "What's that for?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to give it to Mark." And so I told them the story. And then I thought, I'm committed to this. So I then broke it into 3 pieces. I got it embossed in acrylic block and inscribed to Margaret Thatcher, and I wrote her a hand letter saying, "This is the very last piece," etc. And I gave one to Graham as the first man through, and I thought, I'll have one myself. So I kept one myself. And we got it to Margaret Thatcher, and she kept it on her desk for many, many years. People used to give me feedback that it was there as a sort of paperweight on her desk. But I don't know where it is now. I've been looking everywhere for it, and I've been talking to everybody, children, to try and find it, but it seems to have gone missing.
Can you just take us back to that moment of the breakthrough?
Yeah.
Just talk
Oh,
about your
well,
emotions and how you.
yeah,
Is it just something that happened, or how did you feel?
No, it was. You knew that it was going to be historic. You knew that it was special. It proved to ourselves that the tunnel was going to happen because we'd done it with the first machine. The other 2 machines would be straightforward. We'd made that breakthrough because, and so we were all confident then that the project there'd be trains running through there in no time at all. But it was historic, and everybody was excited, and the 15 of us had been chosen, and so we were all very proud of it. And there was a lot of anticipation, waiting for the time when we could break through and go through. And when we went through, the reason we went through into the French is that they were still able to drink and smoke and party and things, so we had a party on their side. As soon as we went through, the champagne was there and things. You couldn't do that on the British side.
Why was that?
Health and safety and things, and the project was still going on live, so we couldn't go carrying bottles of champagne through. But the French always could, and they continued. So yeah, it was a great moment to go through. Quite exciting. There was media everywhere, which was a bit overawing. I can't remember too much about it really.
What was the party like with the French?
Well, they treated their engineers all got medals of honour, I think, because they treat them more highly than they do in the UK. We just doing our job. They were on a sort of more important mission almost, and more celebrations. They're good at celebrating, the French. And
they've got a medal and you didn't.
Yeah, basically.
How do you feel about that? Or is it just one of those things?
No, it's one of those things you accept, and that's it. We usually keep out the limelight, as a civil engineer. But it was a proud moment. I mean, I remember before we started, when we first dug the first sod, I was standing on a really clear day looking across at France, and I was thinking to myself, I don't know whether this is possible. It's such a long way, and we don't know exactly what's there and what we're trying to achieve. Especially the logistics of having to carry everything through a tunnel and continue a tunnel boring machine. And my foreman must have read my mind, because he came up, he was a big Irish guy, and he said it's a heck of a long way, Alan, although he swore a few times in saying that, as you do. And I don't know why, I just turned around to him and said, yeah, but we only have to cross the halfway, Frank, to beat the French. And he used that as an incentive to the men all the time, we've got to beat the French, And we did. We actually had a bigger party when we crossed the halfway in the summer, just privately amongst the men on the project. We had a bigger party than at the end. At the end of the day, on the 1st of December, there was a party for 2,000 people in Dover, the castle. But no, we had a big party to celebrate crossing that border, and we actually went an extra 5 miles into the French territory.
So you invaded France, technically?
Yes. In fact, I got some T-shirts made saying, I now work in France, to all the people who were going there every day. Yeah.
I take it you've been through that tunnel since.
Oh,
how do you feel when you go through that tunnel,
many
knowing
times.
that your huge part in it?
It was a... everybody is still very proud when they go through it, who were involved in the project, and people still talk about it all the time if they ask you about it, So yeah, it's you go through and you see the cross passages flash past, and you're travelling in that train, and you think, yeah, this is there's going to be another one day, is what I actually think, because we can't get enough trains through there at the moment with the number of people who want to go from London to Paris. And there is a concession still available to build another one.
But being part of that, nobody really thought it could be done. Nobody really thought it could be done.
No, including myself. I mean, there was a bit unknown. We only had, I think it was 12 boreholes across to see what might be there. When the route we chose was in the Chalk Mile, which was, and we tried to stay within the Chalk Mile throughout the whole drive. It was a bit difficult, particularly on the French side. They had a lot of water to start with, getting into the tunnels. And we had difficulty to start with a lot of water when it wasn't too deep. The ground was a bit more broken and water was coming through. But we were, once we got going, then it became, the aim then was the logistics of getting it supported, getting the locomotives in and the spoil out and the linings in and things. And it was all a big logistics team. We set up our railway. I think we were the third biggest railway in the country, after, at that time, British Rail and London Underground. And so it was a big logistics exercise, really.
And as a civil engineer, you're doing it all the time. You don't think of all this, having an English Channel above your head. Did it ever cross your mind, or you just get on with the job?
No, you get on the job. you get on with the job. We did a very large crossover chamber whilst the tunnel boring machine was still going on. And at one stage through this crossover chamber construction, and a lot of the photographs are of that chamber because it's such a big chamber. And it just had a temporary lining to start with while we were excavating it, and then we put a permanent lining at the end. But during the excavation through the crown, there was some big cracks occurred, about 50 feet long on both sides, and water came in, and the whole lot dropped about 6 inches, and so straight away we had to drill into it and support it and drain off any water, because the water wasn't connected to the sea, although we didn't know that at the time. It was a water pocket just above the crown, and once we drained it off, it was okay, but it was a bit. And I remember talking to the shift boss shortly afterwards, and I said, were you ever worried? He says, no, there was nowhere to run. And I thought that said it all. You know, you're 5 miles out, and this thing starts to come down on you. There's nowhere to run. But there was a few other incidents of that nature that we had to live through. You know.
But you were making history, weren't you? You were doing this thing, making. I mean, Napoleon thought of it, didn't he? I think
there was,
and people talking about it, but nobody ever achieved it.
No.
Hitler would have liked to have done
yeah,
it. But you were absolutely making history. It was just massive at the time.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was a national pride. It was a different era, wasn't it?
It was very different, and I'm just not sure whether we really took that in. You know, we were really keen on a breakthrough, but you always are when there's a breakthrough of a tunnel. Every tunnel we've worked on, there's always a celebration when she breaks through and photographs and things like that. But this one seemed a little bit different, but that's because it was there was more dignitary and more media and more interested, and live on TV on a Saturday morning. You know, it was a tremendous day, and to be involved in. And
so you'll be able to dine out on that, haven't you?
I don't talk about things much like that, but
no.
On occasions like this, when you get to my age and you've retired, you do reflect on it, and it's good to have videos and things like this, and the kids like it. They like it, but it's very difficult. You know, the technology now is much more advanced. Such as on HS2, we've just completed 16 kilometres with the most advanced tunneling machine possible. But it's taken them 3 years to do 16 kilometres. We did 3 years, we did 22 kilometres. And with the equipment that was available at that time. It was a tremendous achievement, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, non-stop. And a lot of people directly involved took it as their job, but there was a lot of interest from people behind the scenes who hadn't been into the tunnels much, etc. I mean, I took some very celebrities and things. Michael Portillo, I remember spending half a day with, taking down, and that got him in because he's got an interest in trains. And the Archbishop of Canterbury came, and I took him down one time, and things of this nature. So I got used to that sort of media attention, people's attention, and so on the day, it was tense. I'm sure Graham was very, very tense because he had things that he felt he'd been told he needed to say, as you know, Neil Armstrong, as I said. Nobody really knew Buzz Aldrin until recently when he talks and things. Everybody, who's the second person? Don't know. So.
You're Buzz Aldrin.
No, as I say, representing all the team and everything, it was just a great honour.
Yeah, just take us through that. I mean, like I said, to you, it happened to you, didn't it? You're in that situation that nobody else has been in before, aren't you? Can you remember what you were thinking as you came out and you saw France? Was it like that? What was it like?
Well, when we came out,
How long did you have to crawl for?
Oh, it was only about 12 feet.
All right, you crawl, you
get through the hole.
What were you thinking when you went through that tunnel, and what did you think when you got up the outside?
Well, I was thinking of of what I had to do, what I was going to. I remember, well, I see it now. When I went through, I decided to do a bit of a, so I did one of those. And then I shook hands with my opposite number, and he shook hands with me, and it was filmed. It was filmed, and we had a brief chat, and then of course, the filming then went from me. He wasn't interested in me really, to Malcolm Rifkin coming through next, because he was behind me, a few 30 seconds behind me or something like that, and then the chief executive of Eurotunnel, and so it went on, yeah, so by that time we were just having a chat in the background, and I was then thinking, I've got to make sure that, because when I did come through, you said, what do you think of? I thought, I'll get the very last piece of rock.
Well, now that's history.
And yes.
Just reach for it or what? So,
Yeah, I grabbed it. It was because I watched Graham. I was right behind Graham, and except for this cameraman, I had to keep pushing out of the way, and I saw when his blade went through, there was a big, he wrenched a piece off, and I thought, that's the piece, I'm going to get that. So that was how I came to the last piece. And the piece I've got actually has got a little mark from the pick on it.
Just explain that. So when you're going through, you have to dig it through.
He had to dig it through. He had a hand machine.
I didn't realise.
Oh, right.
So you just say, what was that? That is weird. So when you went in,
Yeah, there was still that much ground between us.
so when
With a small hole through.
So when you were in that tunnel, you weren't connected.
No.
So take us through that. You were there, and we were.
Yeah, we could see movement through a small hole, 2-inch diameter. We could see a small movement on the other side, and it was about that far apart. So Graham actually had an important role. He had to, and the guy on the other side, Philippe Gazette, they had to make the hole. They had work to do. I was standing behind, sort of pulling a bit of muck away and things as it came out. But I did grab the first one, and put it to the side. Actually, I put it to the side so I knew where it was, and that's what I had to then go back for as other people started to come through.
But it's just like he did it. It's the first time in history you were there. Why the breakthrough to France? Just in billions of years ever.
Yeah, first ones. Yeah.
I find that it's just wonderful.
Well, that's why I said the most important piece to Margaret Thatcher. It was the very last piece. Yeah. So, and I, as I say, I hand wrote to verify it, and I thought it might go in a museum sometime. And sure, I got a very nice handwritten reply from her.
Do you think that last piece of rock from that Margaret Thatcher rock should go in a museum somewhere?
I think it should.
There should be more.
Yeah.
It should represent more. It should be something in the British Museum, maybe.
Exactly. That's what I hoped for at the time.
What would you like to see with that piece of rock? What would you like to see happen to it?
I always thought that it would be really good when Margaret Thatcher passed on or whatever, that it would go into a museum or something, and maybe my handle letter would be there with it, just to verify that it was like. I thought it was an important piece of rock. And I still do, and I've been trying to find it since she passed on. I even wrote to David Cameron about it and asked him if he knew where it was, and he's Margaret Thatcher's son and daughter, because they've been selling a lot of stuff off. If they've got it, maybe they have. Maybe they've sold it off for lots of money in America or something. I don't know. But
there's this
I haven't
rock
been
around.
around.
You'd like to be reunited with this.
I
The
would
last piece of rock
very
was in
much.
Britain and France.
Yes.
The last piece.
Yes.
You'd like it to go in the British Museum.
British Museum, or something like that. Yeah.
Oh,
I think it's
great.
deserving of it. Yeah.
It's just the process of finding it, though. Like I said, you don't know where it could be in somebody's drawer.
Yeah, it could indeed. Yes, it's possibly been thrown away. I don't know, but I've got my little piece anyway, and Graham's family have got his. So.
And that must be a treasure. So final question. That you must absolutely treasure that.
Yes. Yeah. It's on show in our house, but in my study. But
That's just, every time you look at that, you look at history.
Yeah. Well, that's it.